Welcome to Echo of Crime YouTube channel. When the cold case detectives press play, the sound was faint at first, the soft static of aging magnetic tape, the hiss of time. Then voices emerged. The tone was steady, routine. Two detectives sat in a small room more than 40 years ago, asking questions that had gone unanswered for decades. And across from them sat a man already in prison, a man who had lived in silence on this subject for years. They asked him again about Roseanne. Her name echoed through the interview room speakers, now decades later. This time, he recognized her, not just the face, but the memory. He spoke quietly, not with remorse, not with emotion, just acknowledgement, a confession that had been recorded, documented, and then filed away. This wasn't new evidence. It was old evidence finally heard. Cold case detectives immediately pulled the original case file. They reviewed interviews, reports, witness statements from 1975. And for the first time, the pieces aligned. The timeline of Roseanne leaving the bar. The route she likely took home. The times Davis was known to be in the area. His known behavior patterns from other cases. Everything that was unclear before now had a center. The confession on the tape connected every loose detail that had kept the case unresolved. The detectives notified Roseanne's family. The call was quiet, direct, respectful. There were no dramatic announcements. Just truth finally returned to where it belonged. In cases like this, closure does not always feel like relief. Sometimes closure arrives like a reminder of everything lost that time cannot return. Roseanne's family had waited almost half a century. Birthdays passed. Holidays came and went. Photographs remained on mantels long after the faces in them grew older in memory alone. They had not forgotten her. But for years, they had lived in a space between hope and sorrow, not knowing what happened, yet never stopping the quiet act of remembering. It didn't bring Roseanne back. It didn't erase the years. But it gave back the truth. And the truth matters. Law enforcement reviewed the tape, confirmed the voice, and after cross-verifying past investigative material, officially closed the case. The man on the tape, already serving a life sentence, would not face new trials or sentencing. But the legal system still recorded the closure, acknowledging Roseanne's life and final moments had not been forgotten. Her name was spoken again in official records. Her case was no longer listed as unsolved. For the family, that mattered more than punishment. It meant she did not vanish without recognition. It meant her story had an ending, even if it came late. The larger realization. This case sparked quiet discussions among investigators. How many other cases have answers already documented, simply overlooked? How many voices exist on tapes, in files, in reports tucked away in storage? How much justice is waiting in cardboard boxes? Technology did not solve this mystery. DNA did not solve this mystery. No algorithm or breakthrough cracked this case. A human being looking, listening, and caring did. A cold case evidence storage room once again. Camera pans slowly across shelves of boxes. White labels. Faded handwriting. Dust drifting in still air. A single box is removed and carried down the hall. The hallway is quiet. The steps echo. Some answers are not hidden. They are waiting. Waiting for someone who refuses to let memory fade. Waiting for the moment when silence breaks. The story begins in Hagerstown, Maryland, in the summer of 1975. The town was quiet then, factory towns, corner diners, two-lane roads winding past fields and churches. It was the kind of place where people left doors unlocked and knew their neighbors by name. For 17-year-old Roseanne Sturtz, life was full of simple routines. Work, time with friends, late-night chats, and the soft, uncertain excitement that comes with being young and believing the future is still forming. On the night she disappeared, Roseanne was seen leaving a local bar, something common in that era when age verification was looser and teenagers moved more freely through adult spaces. There were people around. Music played. Neon flickered. Nobody noticed anything unusual. She stepped out into the warm air and then simply put, There were no dramatic screams or witnesses claiming shadows in the dark. No calls to police that night. It wasn't even clear, at first, that anything had happened. Her absence only became alarming the next morning, when she did not return home. The investigation begins. Police began searching immediately. They canvassed neighborhoods, questioned patrons at the bar, spoke to friends, co-workers, local cab drivers, and anyone who might have seen a lone girl walking home that night. But nothing surfaced. There were no eyewitness accounts, no surveillance cameras back then, and no digital breadcrumbs to follow, no phones, no GPS, nothing that today gives investigators leads. The investigation was built on memory, and memory is fragile. Within weeks, the case slowed. Within months, it stalled. Within a year, it was cold. Roseanne's family never stopped hoping. They checked newspapers, called investigators, kept her photos close. The case file moved from desk to desk as detectives retired, transferred, or changed divisions. But the case was never closed, just frozen in place, like a clock that stopped ticking. While the Sturt's family mourned quietly and carried questions no one could answer, another story was unfolding in the background. A man named Charles William Davis Jr. was already moving through the criminal justice system. He had been convicted of violent crimes unrelated to Roseanne's disappearance. He was already serving life in prison. Over time, investigators questioned him about multiple unsolved disappearances, including Roseanne's, but he denied involvement. 6 years later, in 1981, detectives sat down to question Davis again. This time, they recorded the interview on an ordinary cassette tape recorder, the kind used in police stations everywhere at the time. But during that interview, when detectives showed Davis a photograph of Roseanne, not from the time of her disappearance, but a more recent one, his reaction shifted. He hesitated. He recognized her. And eventually, he quietly admitted responsibility in her death. Not loudly, not dramatically, just an acknowledgement. That recording should have changed everything. But it didn't, because the tape was filed away and forgotten. Not deleted, not hidden, just lost in the noise of time. The cassette tape that held his admission was stored with hundreds of others in an evidence archive. Over the years, staff changed, storage methods changed, and case indexing systems were replaced by digital systems. Some items were logged, others weren't transferred properly. Files became lines and lists instead of names in investigators' minds. The case remained officially unsolved, even though the answer was already documented. Roseanne's family waited decades, not knowing, not moving forward, not fully grieving, and all along, the truth sat on a shelf. The breakthrough nobody expected. In 2024, nearly 49 years after Roseanne disappeared, a cold case review team revisited the file. The goal was simple: digitize and cross-reference old case material. During this routine archive transfer, an investigator discovered an unmarked cassette tape inside a case binder. But when they played the tape, Roseanne's name was spoken aloud, followed by Charles Davis's own words, acknowledging her. The case didn't require DNA. It didn't require new science. It didn't require a confession room or pressure. It required someone to hit play. A gloved hand pulls out a cassette tape, holds it up to the light. The tape looks fragile, insignificant. For decades, answers were already recorded, not discovered, not analyzed, just waiting. Some mysteries don't require new clues. They just require someone to remember to look. Justice is often imagined as something immediate, a courtroom verdict, a sentence, a dramatic moment of accountability. But in cases like Roseanne's, justice does not arrive quickly. It does not arrive loudly. It does not arrive in the form of courtroom doors swinging open or breaking news headlines. On a cassette tape in a storage box, in a voice that had already moved on from the world outside, locked behind prison walls. Roseanne's family gathered to hear the conclusion of the investigation. The detective who reopened the case spoke plainly. The admission on the tape was real. The details aligned. After 49 years, the case could finally be closed. Only silence and the weight of truth returning home. When a case is unsolved for decades, the pain becomes part of the family's life. It shapes conversations, memories, traditions. It becomes the unanswered question in every quiet moment. So when the answer finally arrived, the family didn't speak in anger or disbelief. They spoke about Roseanne, the person, her laughter, her sense of humor, the way she used to lean in when she talked, like every word mattered. They remembered her, not the crime. Closure is the ability to remember without fear of the unknown. For nearly half a century, they did not know. Now they did. It reminded investigators everywhere that the smallest piece of evidence can hold the final answer, even one stored for decades in a forgotten box. It encouraged departments to re-examine old archives, not just for DNA, but for interviews, tapes, statements, notes, things recorded before digital tracking existed. It reminded families of missing and murdered individuals that time does not erase truth. Sometimes, truth simply waits. The lesson was simple. Justice is not always fast, but sometimes it is patient. The legacy of a single tape. The tape is now stored again, but not forgotten. It has been logged, documented, and preserved properly. It is now evidence of truth, not evidence lost. Roseanne's name no longer sits in the cold case file. She is recognized. She is acknowledged. Her story has an ending, one that finally belongs to her and her family. Time does not erase the truth. It waits. In evidence boxes, in memories. Justice may come late, but when it comes, it restores what was lost. The right to be remembered.